You know what really grinds my gears? I watch product people and VPs burn through 6 to 12 months worth of time and budget, millions of dollars of budget, right, on products that every single customer interview, if they had done any, would have said no to. And it was clear as day to anyone on the product team. And when you ask them, hey, why did you keep going? They're probably going to give some advice, some rote advice.
Rogue.
Rote advice. Well, you got to have intuition, You got to have intuition. Yeah, but under hood, if you clean off the floor a little bit so your shoes aren't sticking to it a little bit, you'll find it's all the IKEA effect.
But you're describing the survivors who failed. What about the ones who ignored the murder wards? Steve Jobs didn't look at focus groups or listen to them. Slack was but just a failed game. Sometimes the wobbly chair becomes the throne.
We're going to talk about wobbly chairs, but you know what we're not going to do? We're not going to be playing the Game of Thrones. That's what we're not going to do. Because ignoring survivorship bias is like you're saying to me, everyone's banking on being the next Steve Jobs. And that is not a strategy. That is everyone looking for the winning lottery ticket.
In this void, we need something. Mm-hmm. The strategy can't be kill everything that doesn't have a spreadsheet. That's not product management. That's accounting at best.
That's private equity.
It's private equity. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Marketing Agile. If this is your first time, welcome. I'm your host, Product Manager Brian Orlando. This is my co-host, Enterprise Business Agility Consultant, Mr. Om Patel, also known as the luminary of low-hanging fruit.
Oh, that's one of the better titles I've had.
Are you feeling quite fruity today?
I am very, very fruity. Oh, yes, indeed. Well, I guess the audience will decide.
We're a tiny, tiny podcast. I know it looks like we have a lot of subscribers. That's because we've been grinding. We've been running up that hill for a long time. So we're trying to get to 1,000. That's our next goal. Every like, I think, sends a puppy to heaven. I think that's
absolutely.
I think those are the rules, actually.
Yeah. Please do like and subscribe. And if you have multiple emails, do that with each of them.
That's true.
I didn't say that.
So today, we're tackling something that's killed more products, more careers, more company cultures than bad market timing or market downturns or whatever ever have. And it's called the IKEA Effect. And that is the scientifically proven, we have some papers we're going to talk about it, bias, where you overvalue things just because you built them. Whatever it is, like a wobbly bookshelf, a wobbly product strategy, the aforementioned wobbly chair. I got aforementioned in there. I think
that's a good term. Yeah, I like that term.
You should get some points for that. I'm just saying that. Although, sadly, the points don't matter. So by the end of this podcast, the promise here is you'll learn how to spot when you or your team are in love with a bad idea, right? The IKEA effect in yourself and your team. You'll be able to spot when to protect passion projects and when to kill them, hopefully, and how to build review processes that don't crush innovation or let your company ship garbage. Unless you're in the business of shipping garbage.
It's a lucrative business, I hear. So this isn't just theory, folks, right? This is the stuff that determines whether your next big bet makes you a hero or a zero.
What if I told you there was a study that proved that people will pay 63% for something that they built themselves, even if it's objectively worse than the professional version of the same thing?
Wow, 63% more, and yet it's still broken?
Yes.
Okay. I'm in. Count me in.
100% more broken than the real thing.
But you paid 63% only, right? So you're still ahead, sort of. Statistics. Mohan and Areli?
Norton, Mohan, and Areli, 2012, the IKEA Effect. That was the Harvard Business School study. We can't question it. That's what people yelled at me on LinkedIn about, or YouTube. I don't know, one or the other. The study demonstrated that participants valued self-assembled IKEA furniture at 63% higher than the identical pre-assembled versions. And that's where this 63% number comes from. We didn't just make it up. I mean, like, I love making up statistical numbers, throwing them on the internet. Executives can't tell. Sorry. Nobody can tell, right? I love doing that. But in this case, it's a real thing. You can go read the study.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is. I kind of agree with the premise, though, that you value more things that you build yourself. I count myself in that group because when I'm building stuff, I want it to be sturdy enough for not just the fit for purpose, but beyond.
Yeah.
Like, what if? I'll overbuild it probably, but even if I didn't overbuild it, because I built it, I would think I tightened everything up so much that it can't possibly fail. It can't possibly wobble, right? So we'll talk more about that. I love the statistics. 100% of the ships that don't fly never crash. Boom. There you have it.
60% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah,
You know it's a category that we're talking about, so you know there's going to be a steel man.
absolutely.
So there's 2 points I have here for you in the steel man. Number one, ownership creates accountability and follow through. Which is funny the way you can tell that I wrote this slide because I wrote it with ownership creates accountability, not accountability demanded or given or forced on someone, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the way that somebody that thinks like that is like, oh, accountability is a 4-letter word for them.
Sure.
No, if somebody's not accountable, then nobody's accountable. And then the other one is detached analysis produces mediocre committee driven results.
Yeah.
Or I have it here as products. If you design the product by committee, you're going to get mediocre results. That's what the steel man here is going to say both ways. Yeah, I mean, those are very real steel man points. I've heard people use them quite often. The first thing right off the bat that I want to kick off this section of the podcast is pointing out that whole ownership creates accountability thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's your opinion, man. That you haven't given me any evidence at that point in saying, oh, this person owns it.
It's their baby.
That's even more of a red flag than communist China over here, because you've told me, well, now someone's going to own it, and I'm going to enforce that they own it and check in on them. So now the pressure's on for them to make it seem like it's good at all costs.
At all costs. That's right. But they don't have the same level of attachment to it that you do. You expect others to to value your own creation equally, if not more, and often they won't.
And you know what's funny is the product leaders that hand off big ideas, they're the worst at this. They're the most at risk for this kind of bias that we're talking about. Is, oh, Brian, I told you that most customers want to see the button in red. I don't know why you haven't done red all throughout. Though I don't know why you hadn't made the whole app in red. Or, oh, I have a great story about it. Sorry, I didn't know.
No, you got to put that in the right spot.
I didn't know it was story time yet, but I had a great moment where I was a product manager and the director of at this workplace. I had a great relationship at the time with the director of product. I remember a bunch of VPs and stuff that had real strong. They would always give me quote product advice. We'll say advice. Mm-hmm. We'll say advice. The issue with advice in me is, I do the podcast on this stuff, so I'm constantly talking about evidence, and I can, I can do the book,
right,
and I can do the, hot seat entrepreneur, skin of my teeth kind of, up at night.
Pick a card, any card.
I can do that. I can do both.
Yeah.
I can go to two full extremes, but I like to, a balanced approach is really better than both of those, and it doesn't burn everyone out. I specifically remember I had the VP of sales telling me, everybody wants dark mode. You should make your app dark mode. And then I had the VP, some business fund. I don't remember exactly what the VP was, but basically the VP of sales versus the VP of operations or something like that. I don't remember what their roles were.
Yeah.
And the VP of operations was like, the app needs to look professional in front of business users. And dark mode looks like a kid's college project. You know what I mean? Like a Silicon Valley MVP or something like that. Make it a standard business application, white screen, black font, that kind of thing. And of course, they never talk to each other.
Of course they don't.
They only argued with me about what to make it. This is an app that I built from scratch, by the way. It's 0 to 1 type app. And I remember somehow they both went to a demo with the director of product who I worked for that I was not invited to, where they were looking at my product. Again, communist parade here. That's red flag number 2.
Sure.
By the way.
That's a big flag too, by
that's
the way.
okay. That's okay. Because I trusted the director of product. I've already stretched ego enough in this story. But the point was, one of the first things, after they did the whole song and dance demo, right, for this very important customer or whatever, the first question they asked, is there a way that you can make this dark mode? Because which by the way, when I first developed the app, we developed it. Me and the development team developed it dark mode only, because myself and development team,
Always use dark mode.
we know that most technical users that are like solo operators or whatever, they prefer dark mode. That's what the evidence that we researched with our UX researcher found. And the VP of the business, or what business function, wanted it to be changed to light mode over the sales guy. Sales is like a siloed operation at that company. So we changed it based on this VP's opinion, because sometimes in development you don't want to get in fights. We'll go over, we'll change all the CSS.
But sometimes it's a boomerang, right? So the minute you get a customer in place to look at this stuff, not just internal VPs and they're going to ask questions like, what about accessibility and this and that?
It was so funny. It was our research is the reason we created the app in dark mode to start. This is really a failure on my part more than it is anything else of the story, is that I just said, look, okay, whatever. We don't really have any customers anyway, so we'll change it to dark mode, or we'll change it to light mode from dark mode, and just get out of my office. Whatever. It's not, I don't want to fight about it. We don't have any users. We have no preference. We just have our research that tells us most people want this. And then the very first customer they got done selling it to said, hey, we love it, but
we want dark mode.
It was hilarious. It was hilarious, and also I think I cried. No, I didn't really cry, but I metaphorically cried. So my story was not just a fun little diatribe. I mean, they are fun diatribes when I do them, but I do have a takeaway. My takeaway here is, start every major decision review with the IKEA check. Now, the story I just told wouldn't really fall into this bucket because I didn't really think it was a major decision. And I mean, in retrospect, it did take, what do you draw the line as major?
Right. I mean, this was a one-line change.
Yeah, well, it theoretically was one-line change.
1 times 5, maybe. I would have just hooked it to system settings myself, but whatever.
You're right. It should have been a one-line change, but that's a story for the
for a different
It's like
day.
the end of Conan the Barbarian. That's a story for another time. For this time is start every major decision review with the IKEA check. Ooh, what is the IKEA check, Brian? Well, that's okay. I'm going to tell you right now. So I've got a couple things to ask. I have a few questions to ask is the IKEA check, which is, number one, how much of my conviction comes from the work I put in versus the evidence I found. Conviction, of course, meaning you're sure that this is what everybody wants. This is it's what plants. And then question number two, how would I fund this if I had funding authority, right, or funding responsibility?
It wasn't my idea.
Right, yeah. Someone brought me cold. Would I fund this? And then number three is probably the strongest one on this list. Write down your confidence level before you present it, and then check it again after you get feedback, your confidence level. And that should tell you, I mean, if your confidence is I'm a 10, everybody wants this, everyone's going to be crawling over each other, whatever, and then you check your feedback with either somebody else or against the market or with evidence or whatever, and maybe you get knocked down a peg or two. And the example I gave probably isn't the best example, because in that example, I went the opposite direction. I was like, I don't really think anyone really cares too much about light mode or dark mode. I think people probably prefer it, but if it's going to be a big thing with the executives, I'm going to let this one go.
That's called capitulation.
In retrospect, I should have not let that one go.
Right.
Actually, our research says you are wrong, Mr. and Mrs. Executive. What research do you have? And then, look, there's none.
Yeah. And I'd have taken the 12-line change or whatever it was and said, if we go with your decision, here's the cost of that decision because the evidence points otherwise. So we're going to incur this cost, right? Are you okay with that?
Oh, and we did. And they weren't.
Of course.
That's how that story ends.
That's the nice thing about being an executive.
Is it?
I guess. I don't know. So that deck that you stayed up till 2 a.m. to create isn't worth more because you're more tired. It's worth more to you because you're more tired.
Oof.
Think about that.
You just sunk every consultant's battleship right there.
I did. Consultants MO. Absolutely.
You got a takeaway here. It's about avoiding bad ideas in the first place because you were involved. If we're going to do the Pareto principle in this one, the 80-20, and you take nothing else in this podcast, take this one. Because you are involved, just be self-aware enough to know, maybe I have some bias. Maybe I need to check this with somebody else. So what do you think about this one? What do you think about overvaluing your own work or being self-aware? Drop a note in the comments. I guarantee you're not going to be alone on this one.
Yeah, would love to hear from you.
We know that bias exists, but here's where it gets really dangerous, when it spreads from products to beliefs.
Wow. Now we're going to talk about an aspect of the IKEA effect, right? The epistemic IKEA effect.
Oh, I'm glad you can say that word because I can't say epistemic.
Why does your team ignore expert research? That's what we're going to talk about next in this segment.
Well, expert research is done by experts. They're some other team. They don't know anything, right?
Yeah, they probably did great work, but it really doesn't impact me because, I have conviction in what I believe, and that's all there is that matters.
This is probably going to be the hardest category for me because I've seen this a bunch of times. I probably have fallen victim to this bias myself, which is another team did excellent research work, but you would never know because you don't take it seriously because you get used to your team doing all the experiments on their own. You do your own scrappy little startup inside of a larger group or whatever, and why? Because you discover ideas, the ideas that you discover for yourself, they feel more true than the ideas that get handed to you, regardless of like how meticulous the research and the experiments and everything that went into it are.
Yes, I agree. Yes, and so this is the yes and. Yes and. They will disregard those ideas all the more if they didn't pay anything for them because they're free. So it's like, well, I'm getting these ideas, these sources of opinions from sources that don't cost me anything, therefore they can't be worth anything. And that is very dangerous because sometimes, quite often maybe, you can throw out the baby with the bathwater there.
So there's academic research here that talks about the IKEA effect with regard to beliefs and analyses, showing people overvalue self-constructed arguments and undervalue free expert knowledge, regardless of actual quality. It's what I'm showing on the screen right now. You can research this. This will be another podcast where I try to put the research links into the show notes because I've got a ton of research links for this one, and I'll try to link this one as well. But this one is interesting because I once built a product off of analysis conducted by I had a whole team in-house. So it was like services and products together. And the services was the analysis side of the house. And what they would write and the reports that they would write would go into basically a database and get crawled by a ton of other people and AI and a bunch of other stuff like that. The whole, quote, system was fueled by what these people were feeding into the engine. Yeah. Right. But because people would like get like a constant stream of updates in their email or whatever else, platform email, whatever they would get it seems free to them. What makes this type of product even like weirder? I don't know a better word for it. What makes this even more challenging is the person that purchases the product is not the user of the product. So to the user, it's extremely valuable. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I had a lot of things that came to my brain right there when we were talking about this. This was a tough one. And,
this is a tough one.
I will tell you, it's a tough one. And at that company with those teams, we never really settled on any one thing. Look, I had a few ideas that never really got tested against the market. I had a few ideas about like maybe we can build research to a point. Like we'll do the 80% and let the customer do the other 20%. Or maybe we'll feed the customer with some things and let them take it over the finish line somehow. But we basically stopped working on that product. Just like another 2-3 months with dedicated effort of the whole team. But that team was so fractured because it's like in the world of like geopolitical analysis, there's so much going on at any one time that you're kind of, if you have a small team, you're thrashing. Sure. There's two things. Context matters. Like generic research, generic like free things you got off the internet or whatever, like that's not specific to our specific situation. That doesn't hone in on our specific situation. And also learning by doing, well, that creates a deeper understanding than reading or being handed stuff by some other team, like research. Like another team did user research, they handed it over to you, you're supposed to read it and say, oh, X% of users do whatever or whatever, and but do they?
Yeah, and also, is that the market we want to serve, or do we just go after the Y%, right? Yeah, I absolutely agree. Both of these are solid steelman arguments. Context is king in this case. If you're one of those people that are subscribing to these third-party research sources, if you will, like, there's so many out there. So I don't want to name names, but let's say you look at something like the Gartner research and say they evaluated 500 companies in the space.
Yeah.
Well, you're in that space, but only just like you're broadly in that space, but specifically you have a nuance that you're serving, right? And so maybe their research conclusions don't really apply to you. I think it's just an input for me.
That's a great example.
Look at it as an input and go, yeah, this is great if we were that, but we're not, right? So what do we do with this? And that ranges from, well, we just throw it away, or we take it and we just hone it a little more for our own market, right? I went through this whole thing during my past in the publishing sphere. Mm-hmm. Same thing. Back in the day, when the company I worked for invented smart terminals. When I say that, I mean they were really putting code into dumb terminals, so the compute and the processing wasn't happening on some mini computer that's centralized. It was happening localized to every machine. Well, of course, performance is no longer an issue now, right? And they were ahead of the curve. But distributed computing, as it became known, wasn't a thing at the time, and nobody wanted to hear about it. It was all centralized. We want mainframe 3300X, whatever, mainframes tethered with all of these dumb machines. So at that point, the company had to make a decision. What do we do? Do we go with what the research says the customer wants, or broadly speaking, right? Or do we just venture out on our own? Yeah. Thankfully, they decided to do the latter.
Well, so the 2 points, the learning by doing creates deeper understanding, deeper than you would if you got a report or whatever. I don't know. There's a whole that's not invented here. Like even part of your example is not invented here. Kind of that's what everyone else is doing. But we're special. Like I'd be very careful about that. I've seen we're special burn a lot of companies.
No doubt.
A lot
Absolutely
of times.
No doubt.
You're not really that special. If you look at the macro trend in your industry, and you take the blinders off a little bit and realize that your industry is a little bit bigger than you might have thought, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you're playing games with the a total addressable market, these kind of terms, like playing games. Strong, yes, context does matter, but also your scrappy experiments with your one product team. Yes, it's important that you touch things and find them out for yourself. Like you as small children, you don't learn until you touch things and you get burned or whatever.
And not to touch them again.
Yeah, that's how you learn. I understand that's where the deep learning comes from, but I would hope that the wisdom of being an adult is you don't need to trip over every root in the yard to learn how to step properly. I would hope that you can take advantage of other teams' learnings and learn yourself without actually making the mistakes. That's what the first point. Oh well, context matters. Yeah, your generic research just misses my specific situation. But so basically, what you're saying is, even the company I was talking about before, we had a service side and we had a product side,
right?
And you kind of had to blend the two to make it totally work. And you say, oh, no other company is doing services and products together. We're so unique. But anybody who's been in tech a year.
Yeah.
Knows that that's complete nonsense.
It is. We used to call them solutions, right? Solution equals service plus product.
Yes. Every tech company's teams systematically undervalue UX research, data analysis research, longitudinal reports compiled by analysts on specific topics or trends. And they undervalue those because, again, mostly they're done internally or by a consultant or whatever, and you don't pay for it and you get it for free. And you undervalue it. There's real wisdom and insights in there. It's just there's so much bias you're bringing to it when you're reading it and you're getting it for free. Yeah. And this weird thing about the human mind, about this whole section of the podcast we're talking about now, is kicking in, stopping you from really realizing that, oh, maybe I should change something or maybe I should do something. Take a step back and ask yourself, out of the evidence I'm seeing and being presented with, even if I didn't do it myself, what existing research are we ignoring? And what can we do about that?
Yeah, I think in totality, you can't just dismiss, that longitudinal research.
People do it all the time, though.
They do. Absolutely, they do. And because it's two reasons, probably, right? Because it's free and they didn't do it. themselves.
Yeah.
Somebody else did it, so what do they know about our industry was special, that syndrome. I think there's a middle ground somewhere. Look at it and say, how much of that applies to us?
Yeah.
And just run with that, because not everything will apply to you, right? Broadly speaking, you're not going to be in the middle of the bell curve all of the time.
I think what we're saying is you didn't reject the research. You didn't reject the research because it was wrong. You rejected it because you didn't suffer to find it. Which is funny because you have another team member or a whole team or a series of teams, or you spent a bunch of money so that you didn't have to suffer to gain that wisdom.
Right.
But here you are rejecting it because you didn't suffer.
I think I'd extend that a little and say maybe it's not even your anything. It's not your team or anything. Maybe it's one of your competitors that suffered. There's learning in there, right? And that's completely free. Ignore it at your peril.
In the case of the Gartner polls and research and what you were talking about before, and like, there's a much more other than Gartner, but like
sure,
everybody's buying those studies.
Right.
They did it once. So your competitors are getting them. Why are you not learning from them? Like,
exactly.
There's a lot here. We need to move on. I need to have a takeaway in this section because we've been ranting a lot. Usually the first category in the podcast is the longest one.
Yeah.
I think this is going to end up being the longest
one. I agree.
Because we both had stories in this section. So there's a takeaway here. I'm going to highlight it quick. It says add a prior art section to every product brief. Well, prior art section, Brian, what do you mean? I'm glad you came to the podcast because I got some things here for you. So before proposing new research, you list out what internal teams have already learned, because your internal teams, they might have access to these studies, to these papers. Like if you're in AI and like if you not just like using if you actually like researching models and training models, you can download all these, like all the papers and everything. They're all freely available. You can go get them all. Number one. And number two, you can assign a steward of learning. So this could be a UX person, UX researcher. I mean, get a UI UX designer could do this work too. Like they're people. They're people. They're also like deep research folks. Like the UX people are like very underutilized in the field. This should be we should get a UX person on the podcast just to talk about like
we've been meaning to do that.
What is happening in the UX side of the universe right now in tech that all these people are so undervalued? Because if you think about a product manager and what the modern podcasts and people and the linked influencers out there are like asking from product people, you should be your own development team and be your own AWS like DevOps expert and everything, and you should do your own stunts and do the product stuff and do the business strategy stuff, right? Ridiculous, right? UX people were already doing this stuff before the whole market decided like, well, we don't need UX people. There's no AI inside of UX. Those are different letters completely. Sorry, that was the amount of thought that went into this. The steward of learning, you add them to every review meeting. In the way that it's starting to sound like a scrum master, isn't it, right? Like somebody that goes to most of your review meetings and kind of connects the dots, Pee Wee Herman style, together to figure out, this team's doing that and this other team's doing that. And they're not there to like supervise or tell people what to do. They're just there to help teams communicate with each other.
Right. Yeah, and in organizations that have a matrix structure, this can easily be supplanted into your teams, right? It's not a full-time thing for a team to own one of these resources, if you will, or people for any length of time.
Yeah.
But this second point here, a steward of prior learning, I think it's a great idea. And again, that doesn't have to be a dedicated full-time role with that title, right? You can rotate if you want, but these are people that are just, like you said, they have their eyes peeled and ears open, and they're learning from what's going on in the past, right?
Yeah.
Prior friars.
If you have nothing, this is also a good candidate to throw over to an agent, because again, an agent that's documenting things in a shared learning area, something like an L&D type
SharePoint, whatever. It could be anything.
Something. I mean,
it'd be a file. All of that stuff.
Be a file on a server. Yeah. Just to like write down what the learnings are and what you tried and what you're learning. And then the final one I have here, you ask, what would have to be true for this existing research to change our plans? Which that should be easy to answer if you're in product, right? Because you already have expectations, you already have KPIs, whatever, the goals that you're looking out for. That should be easy to answer. So those are some takeaways. This is an interesting category. Again, we could have stayed here
Way
longer. So what do you think? Would you have liked us to stay here longer? What do you think? Has your team ever ignored perfectly good research, or maybe for a good reason? I don't know.
Sure.
Let us know in the comments.
Like and subscribe while you're there.
We talked about bias. The obvious solution is some kind of review panel that can murder these ideas and projects whenever they need to, whenever they deem them to be poor investments. Let's talk about murder boards, review committees designed to kill bad ideas. But here is where it gets complicated. So murder boards exist for one reason. I am old enough to remember where in software you had to go in front of a review panel on a regular basis to do things or to like greenlight projects or whatever. So murder boards exist for one reason: to kill your bad ideas before they kill the company. But here's a question. But what if murder boards are killing your good ideas too? So what if the cure is worse than the disease?
Right. Well, what a fantastic segment this one is. All right. So first of all, we should probably define for the younger generation what murder boards actually are.
I probably titled this as a losing proposition. Murder boards. They're review boards. At the early stages of my career, and I'm sure you can talk to this as well.
I can.
You in software, you used to have to go in front of a review panel before you even started a software project. You'd have to go in front of a review panel. You'd have to say, this is my plan for how many people it's going to take and how much money it's going to take and how long it's going to take. And these are the things we're going to accomplish. And here's the KPIs and whatever made up metrics that you dreamt out of the air. You put them down on paper and people are like, oh, great job, kid. You're going straight to the top. That's right. I'm doing the transatlantic accent once again.
I like it.
I hope it made it into the intro of this podcast in some way, shape, or form, but in case it didn't, good job, kid. You're going straight to the top. They originated in high-stakes domains like satellite operations and mission planning for like DoD and NASA and things like that. A big multi-million-dollar type of deals. We're going to waste a lot of money, and what are we going to get out of it? So you had to aggressively surface the flaws. And that's where these, quote, what I call murder boards, just project review boards, basically. That's where they came from.
Yep. Yeah, and that was, you mentioned some of the high-stakes environments where these were used, but they were also used in software, because software used to be fairly high-stakes back in the day. Mm-hmm. Not anymore, but it used to be, right?
Sure.
So they were actually prevalent back then as well. It was at the outset as well as throughout the SDLC.
Sure. The steel man here is fairly ironclad. Listen, you need a rigorous review because that prevents expensive failures downstream, especially when you're talking about next generation fighter jet, multi-billion-dollar failures. And then weak ideas, they deserve to die early. The steel man for this section is actually very good. And I can get behind these as well because the steel man here is, listen, rigorous reviews, they present expensive downstream failures. And also weak ideas that they deserve to die. Forget Dave Chappelle for a second because we may or may not have to pause the podcast to watch a funny clip. Yeah, the weak ideas, you want to kill them early before they waste a bunch of money. And yeah, that's a good thing to do.
Look, it's hard to argue against these. If you're in that situation, see if you can compartmentalize your weak ideas from some of the ones that you want to explore further versus the ones that you're really hedging a good bet on. The weak ideas, the sooner they die, the more funds are available to go check out some of the other ones. Because funding at the end of the day is a finite pool.
Sure.
So if you have this notion of weak ideas can just disappear, but also not because they're external, they could be your ideas, right? So you've got to have that detachment from the ideas. It could be your baby.
Well also, the other thing, the unspoken thing in this category is we're all rowing in the same boat. If we're all on one team, one business team, there's no way I, as a single product manager, can be exposed to every idea in the business. If we have a review board like this, we want that review board who are exposed to much broader swaths of ideas, right? Many more ideas than I can be exposed to. We want them to be identifying and then redirecting resources, quote resources, right? That's chairs and staplers. That's what I'm saying. Money is what I'm saying. right? To the best ideas. And I might not see that. I might have blinders on. What do we believe in this one? What's our stance in this one? I mean, the traditional, quote, murder boards. What most people listening to this podcast will have been exposed to with regard to traditional, quote, murder boards is the people that sit on those boards that have been there in perpetuity forever, that are just there for the prestige. I greenlit that idea, and I invested in this super early, and they're the hipsters of business investment is what I'm saying. Like they're there to make 1,000 bets so they can claim that one bet. They're so smart because they made that one bet a million years ago or whatever. When they made 50 bets that year, and like 49 of them did not pan out, and that one did, so they can claim they're so smart. These are the Mark Andreessens of the world. That's what I'm saying right now.
That's exactly right. So the other 49 were the fault of other people,
like
product managers, etc. Right.
Yeah, they're playing games. They're playing prestige games, right? Yep. They're playing games, basically. If the review board is run with some like basic product management practices, you're not looking for yes or no's here. You're looking for the next milestone. You're looking for the next, funding round or whatever. You're looking for like micro budgeting. You're looking to secure your micro budgeting.
Yeah, you're looking to see what needs testing, what warrants testing next, possibly. Right, these are the micro budget expenses that you can endure without, breaking the bank. There'll be some that are just basically in that other echelon. But yeah, they greenlit. We're good. We're going to pursue those absolutely.
Right.
But they're probably also further along in your product life cycle, in your discovery cycle.
I think what you're pointing out is number 3 here was the default.
Yeah, that's
this type of board should be what is the next experiment we need to see cleared for you to secure your next round of funding. And it's not just like blankly no, or something that there's no way that you could do or whatever.
But that decision, you're right. This is the point I was making. But that decision also comes with the guardrails of micro budgeting. Like you can go so much, right? You go spend this, learn what you can learn, and then we'll come back and review if we need to expend more money on it.
So if you're a finance bro listening to the podcast, or like PE or whatever, listen to the podcast, like we're giving you the playbook right now about like how to use your money to get the best, not be controlling, but how to get the best out of your products, and how to merge R&D with product. This is it, like what we're talking about right now.
Yep. As opposed to playing product roulette.
Or the product Hunger Games. I mean, the last one here is on this review board, you want to rotate the membership on a regular basis to prevent any kind of like political / ideological / groupthink capture of the group, regardless of who they are or where they come from or whatever. They're stopping ideas through the controlling of funding, and this could have a real permanent impact on your business here.
Yeah, this is a valid point too. I feel like most organizations that are not new tend to have the same static board. So it's actually a good point.
The sad part about this section that we're talking about, that we're hypothesizing about, is that I think at the very start of my career, it used to be big project management heavy review panels you would have to go in front of. And I think now in the later part of my career, it's morphed into like one person that controls all the budget, which I think is a real disservice to the concept that we're talking about. It's become more like Shark Tanky, kind of like there's one person you got to convince to get all the money. And I don't think that's great, because like that one person's got biases. That one person's got, that one person has a limited view of how much evidence they can review. And I don't know if it's better now than it was before, when everything was looked at as like resources and project timelines and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's better. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that one person also tends to be far removed from the product side of the house. They're more, on the finance side.
Yeah.
And so they don't really have a purview of what's really happening. Like, what are the latest things you've learned about and how they inform what you should be doing next. Yeah. All they're looking at is the cost side of the equation, for the most part. I'm not saying they don't look at the other side, but the other side is more of an extrapolation anyway. But yeah, the cost side.
Yeah.
So this is a valid point. So membership on this review board, it should be diverse, is what we're saying. And it should not be just finance people, and it should also not be the same people every single time.
We have some takeaways. Transform your murder board. I probably, at this point, I've said murder board so many times, it loses all meaning. It should be rather than a review board, rather than a project review board, which is the way I think about this kind of thing. Turn it into an experiment board or funding board. The funding board would be a better way to word it, right? Every criticism from the board should be tied to a testable claim or a gap in data. So if the board is critiquing you, there should be guardrails on that critique, right? They shouldn't just like open-ended throw you under the bus or whatever. Not that the old project boards ever did that anyway.
Not much.
Not much.
Yeah. No, I agree. So I think part of the experimentation mindset here is also, what do we need to find out and what can we spend at the most on that? Right. And that's where I think the collaboration between product, finance, anybody else who's interested in it, right? Maybe there's some, I don't know, regulatory impact. And so they can be on the board too. But they're informed with the budget that's needed to find out what you don't know with a certain time frame in mind. And then you reconvene.
Yeah. This is interesting too because your board themselves costs a certain amount of money. So it's like the product management function and some kind of like budgetary control. But, you get some kind of like shepherding along of your products or features or oversight or whatever governance, whatever you want to call it, right? The controls here are, it's not personal. It's about the work. It's about the investment of money in the business. That's why you're tying criticism to testable scenarios. It's not about the person's, your idea is terrible. Ohm's got terrible ideas.
Yep, which is true most of the time. I think it's as long as it's evidence-based as well, right? So you're looking at the evidence that you can present and say, it's not my idea. The evidence shows this. And we need to find out X, Y, Z. And here's what I propose we need to spend on it. And then we can talk about that, right? But it isn't just, it's great because it's my idea.
Yeah. So I got the default outcome here is you need to test next to get more funding. It's not just no, right? That's number 2 here. It says number 3 is you only kill when there's a clear disqualifier, meaning there's a legal hurdle that you can't overcome. There's an ethical hurdle you can't overcome, or there's unit economics. In the case of the current world of AI, where you could let every customer in the world go out and generate a million videos of infinite length with AI, but we're going to pay $1 bajillion. The unit economics just don't work out.
I think it does 2 things, right? The first thing it does is it gives you a ceiling limit.
Yeah.
And that's very, very important. I mean, if you're even close to it, you should really re-examine the model, right? Because there's a delta there, and you don't want to be right up against that ceiling limit. So that's one.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, when you have multiple things that you're testing out, right? If each of those have ceiling limits combined, what are you going to spend? What are you going to not do out of 4 things? Yeah. So that you can get somewhere with 1 or 2 things that you want to do, right? Man.
Unless it's strategic, and then there's more. That strategic just means there's more money there. That's all that really means. The great equalizer in this category is down here at number 4. All reviews are time boxed. They're all. That's a great equalizer because the money to a certain point, and especially depending on what level of seniority in the organization cares about that feature, money might not be the hurdle. But I guarantee you the time box will be the hurdle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The time box is just another way of spelling money, though, at the end of the day.
Yeah, right. Yes. This throwaway category ended up being super hot fire. Listen, to wrap this category up, okay, a murder board that only knows how to say no, they're not protecting quality, they're protecting the status quo.
That's exactly right, yes.
We got to move on to the next category, so let me know what you think about this one. Our murder boards. Sorry, I'm going to try not to call them murder boards anymore, ever. But we're done, so I'm never going to call them again anyway. So are they helping or hurting your organization? Share your war stories in the comments with us. Let us know. Yell at me, please. Talk to me all about murder boards. Tell me not to say murder boards. That's what I'm asking you right now in the comments. About if murder boards aren't the answer, then what is the opposite approach? What is an alternate approach? That's right. What if we let people build their wobbly chairs? Self-determination theory research is clear. Autonomy drives motivation. And you're talking to the people at this point. I feel talking to the two people at this point that we did the Deming podcast where like intrinsic motivation obviously is the way to motivate people. Like you like the carrot and the stick, like that they don't work. Like intrinsic motivation is the way to do it. It shouldn't be a controversial take, but sometimes you have to let your team build the wobbly chair, even if you know it's going to be wobbly when it's done. You have to let them do it. The question is, how do you know when they're done and they've got a wobbly chair that's ready for market and they haven't burned down the house? Somehow they're building a chair and they're playing with fire. I don't even understand how.
I would say let them build it to the point where it looks like a chair, it wobbles like a chair, and let them sit on it, because you should definitely not expose that chair to the market, right? And I'm not even worried about the financial damage that's caused as a result of that. Think about the reputation damage. You don't want to be the company that delivers wobbly chairs. It's like
Haiku 3 was a thing at one point. I'm just saying.
Well,
Haiku 3 was terrible. Like I remember getting in a knockdown, drag out fight with a data scientist saying that like you can't present anything from Haiku 3 to a customer direct, like a passer on a website or whatever. You can't do it because Haiku 3 is terrible. It's bad. It barely follows prompts. It's bad. She looked at me like I came to her house and I kicked her dog straight off the second story.
Ow.
She looked at me. I remember that professionally, emotionally, philosophically. I remember it.
Psychologically, you're gonna get your team, some of your team members that say, "This chair is not wobbly. It shakes a bit. This is not a dead parrot." It is a dead. It is an ex-parrot.
This parrot is no more. This is a great discussion, Ohm, but I'm gonna take you straight to the steel, man. Unlimited autonomy. Without guardrails, like that review board we were talking about before, without guardrails, that creates chaos. It spends all of our money, resources spent on pet projects. They have opportunity costs. They have the cost of what else could we be doing. This is our own arguing point from another podcast in years past or whatever, brought back against us. And I hate arguing with myself.
Because you might lose.
That's right. I lose every time.
And you don't know who wins.
I hate losing more than I love winning, which means it cancels anyway.
So a review board that has no autonomy is really just a puppet board.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, to your point, resources get spent on projects. Of course they do. Yeah. Right. And then what happens is your company is going to build stuff that potentially isn't needed by the market because it's somebody's idea is why you're building this thing. If you're in a company like that, and we're going to do this for only one time this particular podcast, keep that resume updated, folks, because it ain't going anywhere fast.
Right. Scoped autonomy. That means freedom within constraints, time, budget, blast radius, whatever, like scoped autonomy. Innovation sandboxes, they let founders run wild with a capped downside. So you basically take this budgetary amount, you put it aside. In the notes here, I put 10 to 15% discretionary time, right, with a light review, right, that goes along with it. I put these three things in here because the alternate is crushing every passion project, stopping your development team from doing all this like refactoring or technical debt review or whatever. That's a great way to run all these very passionate people. Run them straight out of your organization.
Absolutely.
Go test these things against the market. If they don't work out, they don't work out. Throw it away. Cool. Right. But if we're doing the 80-20 thing, then we were saying the 80% solution is enough. To me, that means the 20% can fly under the radar to be like, hey, just deal with it.
Yeah, I think in practice what happens, though, is you spend the discretionary budget, 15, 20, whatever it might be, and oftentimes the end result isn't to fund the rest of it. The end result is, what do we test next? Right. It just depends on the complexity, I guess, of your product too. But, do we continue along this line or do we stop now? Mm-hmm. Right? And if we continue, it isn't like, okay, well, we're just gonna invest all of the money now that it takes to bring this thing to market and beyond. It might be the next experiment. So sometimes it kind of goes that way, but you got to figure that out, right? Because presumably if you're going from one to the next experiment, there's enough of a market that eventually is going to make it worthwhile for you. So you're not risking the farm. That's I guess my diatribe is leading to that. You're not risking the farm by doing it this way.
Right.
It's guarded, and you have the option to stop at any point.
Right. But that's another reason that supports the quote review board, murder boards. That's another thing that supports the murder boards. The governance is such a 4-letter word, and so and so is like project review. They're so 4-letter words. It's hard to find a product review panel, that kind of thing. Yeah. Sorry, I know I'm trying to give it other names to soften it, to kind of like direct it into what it should be.
Right.
But without a solid product management function, I find these things that they fall through the cracks, and they're done by many other functions. They don't work very well, and that's a lot of what we're talking about today. Is like we don't have solid product practices.
To that, I don't know if we have a specific area or section of the podcast when we talk about some of the practical maybe takeaways or tips. But one of the things on that last point you raised is maybe you could assign an impartial facilitator for this product review or whatever you want to call it, right? And that facilitator is an impartial metrics owner. So they don't have skin in the game. They're just simply looking at the evidence, and based on that, they're making a decision. I say it like that, it makes it sound like it's one person. Ideally, it should not be one person. Ideally, it might be 2 to 3 people, and it wouldn't be the same 2 to 3 people every time you meet.
Yeah. Well, in the previous category, we said, well, this board should evolve/revolve so that it doesn't get captured by any one person or entity or group or whatever.
Yes.
And that's still solid advice here. If we have other solid advice, it's going to be your innovation sandbox with guardrails. Let's talk about that, okay? Because we want to cap the budget and the timeline. We want to do those two things, right?
Yep.
Because, again, we talked about micro budgeting. This is a way, like, hey, you can apply for this budget. You can apply for this timeline. They go together. You want to define the blast radius, the worst thing that can happen if this thing completely explodes, doesn't work. You want to define that up front. That probably would be a condition of your applying for this money to start. You want to come up with some kind of pre-committed success metrics, which is saying you move the needle in whatever area it is, right?
Yep.
Because ideally you want to develop something and then prove that you can move the needle in a certain area. And then you want to make it visible. You want some kind of light touch review by this board that we're talking about, not a preemptive veto. What I'm trying to set up is not a, absolutely not do things until, you get the stamp of this committee or whatever. Right. That's not what I'm trying to do. I understand different size organizations operate differently, but again, all I'm trying to do with these takeaways here is some kind of panel that has some kind of cross-functional expertise into different areas of the business, that has some kind of pool of funding set aside. This is a better way to do your R&D than we're going to give our R&D to some dude that wears a bow tie over there and give him $1 bajillion, several $1 million, and he's going to go run a project and nothing ever comes of it. To be real suspect of people like that, because what all the money you're putting into that person, but if that money never filters into any other organization in your business.
Yeah, a lot of companies have this sort of a structure in place under different guises. I'm thinking about Silicon Valley's kind of skunk works,
sure.
Where sometimes something will come out of it, but the amount of money that gets expended there, it's incredible. And you have innovation labs and things like that in large companies that come up with tools. Initially, these tools are almost always grown as internal.
Sure.
And then if there's a market, we can sell it. That's how they do it, right? So I agree with that. I think, if you're having those kinds of structures in place, figure out if there's a better way, because there is a better way.
You can't schedule serendipity, but you can budget for it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So with this section, let us know, does your org give you room to experiment? Do they give you budget to experiment? Let us know in the comments. I'm very interested in different people's hoops they have to jump through to get funding for this kind of thing.
Yeah, we would love to know. Thank you for staying this far. And also don't forget, while you're here, like and subscribe.
All right, we've talked about all the biases. And the problems with murder boards and the case for autonomy. Now we're going to pull it all together. We're going to talk about something you can actually use. We're going to talk about the kill or nurture framework, the decision matrix for all your projects.
I love me a framework.
Listen, you and BCG and consultants all around the world love a 2x2, so I saved the best for last, and we're going to go up with a 2x2. Here we go. Every product leader loves a 2x2. That's what I'm saying. Every consultant loves a 2x2. That's what we're going to do now. We're going to talk about the kill, nurture framework. It's a decision matrix. I kind of mocked up for this section of the podcast. And we're going to talk about it now. Then, and the Steelman right away is, frameworks. They oversimplify complex human and market dynamics. But also, great products often defy rational analysis, and you can't stick them in a 2x2. Great products can't be put in a 2x2, which I'll say, hey, get out of my office.
Yeah, so the first one, frameworks oversimplify complex human and market dynamics. Sometimes that's true. Oftentimes that's a cop-out. If you really think about it, yes, of course you have human and market dynamics, but you should be able to create some sort of a framework. Now, granted, it could be a little bit fickle, but it's better than nothing. You should be able to come up with that. The second one, great products often defy rational analysis early on. Typically, people that are not finance-minded, they really don't like budget meetings, they'll say this. They'll say, but, I have a gut feel. I know this is going to work. Trust me.
Yeah. Trust me, bro.
Right.
In refutation of the Steelman here, I'm just gonna point out that frameworks, like, they don't make decisions. Those are just frameworks. They're frameworks to help you. Like a 2x2 is not gonna make a decision for you. It's just gonna help you kind of like guide your decision, and you're gonna make the decision anyway. So like, don't blame the framework because you don't like what you're looking at.
Right.
Like, don't blame the backlog because you don't like what you're looking at. Make the decision for yourself. Have an adult conversation with yourself. I want to show on the screen the quad. I created this quad, by the way. Like, this is not something I just randomly found on the internet. I created this quad, and you can tell because in the evidence category it says the evidence is can't find any, and on the right it says
lots and
tons.
And tons.
So if the people listening in the x-axis of the passion evidence matrix, the x-axis is evidence. And on the left, you can't find any evidence at all. And on the right is tons and tons of evidence. And on the y-axis is passion, meaning your company or the people in your company or your department or whatever, passion for this thing, whatever it is. And on the lower part, it says, we don't like it at all. And then the higher part is, we like it.
We love it.
We love it. We like it. We love it. So the four categories here are pretty straightforward. In the lower left category of I can't find any evidence and I don't like it anyway, you kill those ideas
immediately.
You kill those ideas.
Yeah.
We're talking about ideas here. The idea Hunger Games on the podcast.
Right.
And in the lower right, where you have tons of evidence, but you don't like it, or maybe you don't have any experts in your company, right? Because that could go in here as well in passion. Then you find a champion, or you go outside your company and you hire a champion. In the case of AI, right? A lot of people are doing this. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're in the Agile community and you know something about this like weird yellowish find a champion, this vomit yellow find a champion. I purposely tried to color these in the worst colors in the world. I was
succeeded, I think.
What are the 80s Stranger Things colors I could get to name these? I absolutely did that. I did that. Find a champion. Like, this could be you outside the company, and in fact, I would posit that this is a lot of companies right now. Is you are that champion, you don't know it. You don't know it.
Right.
You just haven't networked. You haven't reached out. You haven't done whatever to find out that you're that person that you have tons and tons of evidence, and they internally don't like this thing, but you've got the passion for it.
Right.
So this is stopping you from moving it up a category into the green box, right? So if you've got tons and tons of evidence and you've got the passion for it, you love this thing, you're ready to take this thing to the moon, you're ready to scale it, you're in the green box here.
You might not be directly there. You could go via the purple box, but you certainly can move in the top tier.
Well,
right?
I feel the purple box is the one where, we're going to give you these micro budgets, and we're going to spoon feed you the budget because we know you really like doing this thing and you're really good at it, but the market hasn't responded yet. I've been here in this category as a product manager where I'm trying to educate and build a market, which is that purple box, by the way. I hate being there. I will tell you right now. I'll make a claim on the podcast, I can't stand being in that purple box, because in that purple box, you believe in the thing, your team believes in the thing, your executives and your salespeople, they don't believe in the thing. The people funding, they don't believe in the thing. You're running on a limited budget of willpower and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
But if you don't make it into a stream of revenue that nobody can deny, if you don't move it over to the green box, please let me know in the comments if you have another take on this one. There's some takeaways here. I'm going to hit them real quick. Plot every initiative before you go into that review panel, right? You just want to have them written down. The sandbox area that we said, which was the upper left that I said I was super scared of, right? That's the cheapest. What you want to do if you're in that area is you want to define what is the cheapest experiment that we can do to move this purple box forward and keep going,
right,
before we get killed, right? Because you're still going to get killed in that purple box. You're just going to get assaulted by people internally that are trying to get your money to send it to other boxes.
That's right. Yeah. So don't be under a fallacy that if you're in the purple box and you have just enough leeway to do something, that you're going to end up in the green box directly. It could be small steps.
Yeah.
You'll still stay in the purple box, and you may have to go through iterations of this.
I think that's why I don't like it. It becomes the Hunger Games where people can see you're successful, and it's a cutting off at the knees that begins when you're in that partial success box, and they want to take your money and move it somewhere. Anyway, the find the champion box, the lower right box that we pointed out. If no one wants to own it passionately, evidence is not going to save it. Evidence alone, there's definitely a market for this, but we don't have the talent, we don't have the passion, we don't care about it that much. It's really not, our ICP isn't really in that market.
That money's not going to stay with you.
Yeah, you're really not. And then for any of these boxes, really, you need real evidence. You need a customer or a market signal, because the committee alone, even though the committee kind of feels like it's going to be a thing, but their opinion alone is not going to move the needle.
Yeah, you need hard evidence.
Yes. Yeah. So I think out of this category, the best murder board, it's not a room full of executives, it's a room full of customers who won't buy your stuff.
Right. So don't confuse charisma with causality. Founders can be persuasive.
Yeah.
But the market is the final jury.
Sure. We covered a lot of ground. We covered the IKEA Effect, a scientifically proven bias. We talked about murder boards, project review boards, product review boards. The intent is not for them to kill initiatives. It's to try to get the best initiatives to move the funding to, so that those things have the best chance. Whether or not they're well executed, that's another conversation, which we kind of talked about a little bit here. We probably could talk about more. We talked about letting people build the wobbly chairs, right? Autonomy, that intrinsic motivation. We talked about a lot of different things, and I'm really wondering what people are going to resonate with this podcast.
Yeah. Let us know once you get through this, because as you said, a lot of things. I'd like to know about your thoughts on the 2x2. You've seen a lot of those, but let's know if you think this is useful, if you could use it in your environment. If not, what would you use instead? Also, let us know about other topics that you want us to delve into. And lastly, please like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.